The morning rush at Rosie's diner was in full swing. The clinking of silverware against plates blended with the hum of conversation as customers filed in for their daily dose of comfort food and coffee. Behind the counter, a woman in her late 20s moved with practiced efficiency, her light brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her blue uniform showing signs of wear but meticulously clean. "Order up for table 6, called out the cook, sliding 2 plates of steaming pancakes onto the counter. Lily nodded, balancing the plates on her forearm while refilling a customer's coffee mug with her free hand. She had mastered this dance years ago, the art of being everywhere at once without seeming rushed. "Thanks, Lily," said an elderly man seated at the counter. "Don't know how you keep track of everyone's orders without writing them down," she smiled. "Just good memory, Mr. Chin. Besides, you've ordered the same breakfast for the past 3 years." The truth was, Lily had always had an exceptional memory. It had served her well during her years at the music conservatory, where she could memorize complex pieces after hearing them just a few times. That skill now helped her remember who wanted extra butter, who needed decaf, and who was allergic to gluten. As the morning crowd thinned out, Lily took a moment to rest her feet. The diner had been her workplace for almost 2 years now, ever since her mother's medical bills had forced her to leave school and find full-time work. The owners, an older couple named Joe and Rosie, were kind enough to give her flexible hours, which meant she could help care for her mother between shifts. "You look tired today," commented Denise, another waitress who had become something like a friend. "Rough night?" Lily shrugged. "Mom couldn't sleep well. The new medication makes her restless." "You should take some time off," Denise suggested, not for the first time. "You're here almost every day." "Can't afford it," Lily replied simply. There was no bitterness in her voice, just a statement of fact. She had learned to accept her circumstances, even if they weren't what she had once dreamed of. The bell above the door jingled as a delivery man entered with a large box. "Package for Joe," he announced, setting it down near the register. Joe emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. "Finally came, did it? Rosie's been waiting for this." He signed for the package and called out to his wife. Rosie appeared, excitement written across her face. "Is that the keyboard? Let's set it up right away." Lily watched with curiosity as they opened the box, revealing an electronic keyboard. It wasn't top of the line, but it was decent enough. "What's that for?" she asked during a lull in service. "Thought we'd add some live music during dinner service," Joe explained. "Make the place a bit fancier. My nephew plays a bit, said he'd come by a couple nights a week." Lily nodded, trying to ignore the sudden pang in her chest. Music had been her whole world once. She had spent hours at the piano each day since she was 6 years old. By the time she was accepted to the conservatory on a partial scholarship, everyone had expected her to go on to great things. But life had other plans. The keyboard was set up in a corner near the entrance where it wouldn't take up too much space but would be visible to everyone. As the afternoon dragged on, Lily found her eyes drifting toward it repeatedly. During the mid-afternoon lull, when only a couple of tables were occupied, she found herself standing before the keyboard. Without thinking, she pressed a key. The sound was tinny and slightly out of tune. "You play?" Joe asked, coming up behind her. Lily jumped, embarrassed to be caught. "No, I was just curious," she lied. It was easier than explaining. Few people at the diner knew about her past. She preferred it that way. It hurt less to have people see her only as a waitress rather than as someone who had fallen short of her potential. That night, after her shift ended and most of the staff had gone home, Lily stayed behind to help Joe close up. Rosie had already left, complaining of a headache. "You go on home too," Joe told her as he counted the day's earnings. "I can finish up here." "I don't mind," Lily said. "Besides, Mom's asleep by now anyway." The truth was, she didn't want to leave yet. The keyboard had been calling to her all day, like an old friend wanting to reconnect. Once Joe disappeared into the office to put the money in the safe, she approached it again. This time she sat down on the small stool they had placed in front of it. Her fingers hovered over the keys, trembling slightly. It had been almost 2 years since she had played. Would she remember how? Tentatively, she played a simple C major scale. The muscle memory was still there, her fingers finding their positions automatically. She adjusted the volume to keep it low, not wanting to draw attention. Before she knew it, she was playing the beginning of a Bach prelude, one of the first complex pieces she had mastered as a child. The keyboard's sound quality was poor, and several keys were slightly out of tune, but none of that mattered. For the first time in months, she felt like herself again. She was so absorbed that she didn't notice Joe standing in the doorway of his office, watching her with surprise. "Well, I'll be," he said, causing her to stop abruptly. "When you said you didn't play, that wasn't exactly true, was it?" Heat rushed to Lily's face. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." Joe waved away her apology. "No need for that." "You're good, really good," she shrugged, uncomfortable with the compliment. "I used to play a bit." "A bit?" Joe raised an eyebrow. "That didn't sound like a bit to me." "That sounded like years of training." Lily looked down at her hands, calloused now from carrying heavy trays rather than from hours of practice. "I studied at the conservatory for a while. But that was a long time ago." Joe seemed to sense her reluctance to elaborate. "Well, this old keyboard could use someone who knows what they're doing." "My nephew barely knows chopsticks. If you ever feel like playing during your breaks, feel free." After Joe left, Lily sat for a long time, her fingers resting lightly on the keys. She thought of her old piano teacher, Mrs. Greenwood, who had believed in her talent so fiercely. "Music isn't just something you do, Lily," she used to say. "It's something you are." Had that changed? Was music still part of who she was, even after all this time? The next morning, Lily arrived at work earlier than usual. She had barely slept, her mind filled with melodies she hadn't allowed herself to remember for years. She found the keyboard manual in the office and spent an hour figuring out how to adjust the settings, tuning it as best she could with the limited options available. Throughout her shift, she kept glancing at the keyboard. Customers came and went, ordering the daily special, complaining about the weather, sharing gossip about neighbors and coworkers. Lily moved among them as always, refilling coffee cups, taking orders, cleaning tables. But something had shifted inside her. During her lunch break, she slipped over to the keyboard again. This time, she played a simple melody she had composed years ago for a class assignment. The piece was melancholic, but with hints of hope woven throughout, much like her own life. "That's beautiful," said a voice behind her. Lily turned to see a regular customer, an older woman who came in every day for lunch and always ordered the soup and half sandwich combo. "Thank you," Lily replied, feeling oddly vulnerable. "Are you going to be playing here regularly?" the woman asked. "It would be a nice addition." Lily shook her head. "Oh no, I just work here. I was just trying it out." The woman looked disappointed. "Well, that's a shame. You have a gift, a gift." That's what Mrs. Greenwood had called it too. But gifts were meant to be shared, weren't they? Not hidden away like something shameful. That evening, Lily stayed late again. This time, she brought sheet music she had unearthed from a box under her bed, pieces she had once known by heart, but now needed the notes to remember. As she played, she felt something awakening inside her, something that had been dormant for too long. Joe found her there again, lost in the music. Instead of interrupting, he simply listened until she finished. "My nephew called," he said when she finally noticed him. "Says he can't make it this weekend to play. Something about a camping trip." Lily waited, sensing there was more. "We've been advertising live music for Friday night," Joe continued. "Rosie's worried people will be disappointed if there's none." "I'm sure they'll understand," Lily said, although she knew how important these little touches were to Rosie, who had been trying to make the diner more upscale for years. "I was thinking," Joe said carefully, "would you consider playing for a couple of hours on Friday? Nothing fancy, just background music while people eat. We'd pay you, of course, on top of your regular wages." Lily's heart raced. The thought of playing in public again, even in this small, familiar setting, was both thrilling and terrifying. "I don't know, Joe. It's been a long time since I performed for anyone." "Just think about it," he said. "No pressure. But from what I've heard, you'd be doing us a favor." That night, as Lily sat by her mother's bedside, helping her with her evening medications, she thought about Joe's offer. Her mother noticed her distraction. "What's on your mind?" she asked, her voice weak but her eyes still sharp. Lily hesitated, then told her about the keyboard at the diner and Joe's request. As she spoke, she realized how much she wanted to say yes despite her fear. Her mother reached for her hand. "You should do it. You've put your life on hold long enough because of me." "I haven't put anything on hold," Lily protested. "Life just changed direction. You gave up everything to take care of me," her mother said. a familiar guilt creeping into her voice. Your education, your career, your music. And I'd do it again, Lily said firmly. You're my mother. Yes, but I'm not your whole life. Or should I be? Her mother squeezed her hand weakly. Play on Friday for me. I want to know that some part of your dream is still alive. Looking into her mother's eyes, Lily found herself nodding. Perhaps it was time to stop hiding who she really was, even if it was just for one night in a small diner. As she walked home that night, Lily felt lighter than she had in years. Tomorrow she would tell Joe that she would play on Friday. It wouldn't be Carnegie Hall, but for now, it would be enough. Music was still part of who she was, even if her life had taken an unexpected turn. And maybe, just maybe, this was the first step on a new path. Friday arrived faster than Lily expected. She had spent every spare moment practicing on the diner's keyboard, coming in early and staying late, working through pieces she once knew by heart. Her fingers were stiff from disuse, and she made mistakes that would have earned her stern looks from her old teachers, but slowly, the music began to flow more naturally. You're really serious about this, Denise remarked, catching Lily practicing during a slow Thursday afternoon. Lily's hands stilled on the keys. Joe asked me to fill in tomorrow night. Nothing fancy, just background music. Denise leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Doesn't look like nothing fancy to me. That sounded pretty impressive. Lily shrugged, uncomfortable with the compliment. It's just an old piece I used to know. Well, I'm bringing my husband tomorrow night to hear you play, Denise declared. He won't believe me when I tell him our Lily is a secret piano genius. I'm not a genius, Lily protested. But Denise was already walking away, a determined look on her face. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. What had she gotten herself into? It was one thing to play for herself, or even with Joe or Denise walking by occasionally. It was another thing entirely to sit in front of a restaurant full of people, to be the center of attention, to risk judgment or, worse, indifference. What if she froze? What if her fingers fumbled the keys? What if everyone wondered why a woman with real talent was serving their eggs and coffee every morning? By morning, dark circles shadowed her eyes, but there was no backing out now. Joe had printed small signs announcing live piano music Friday night, and Rosie had been telling all the regulars to come back for dinner. The day dragged on endlessly. Lily moved through her tasks mechanically, her mind elsewhere. She dropped a plate, something she hadn't done in months. She mixed up orders. She gave Mr. Chen regular coffee instead of decaf and had to remake it while apologizing profusely. You all right, Lily? Joe asked after the third mishap of the morning. You seem distracted. I'm fine, she assured him. Just a little nervous about tonight. Joe's face softened. You know, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. It was just an idea, but Lily shook her head firmly. No, I want to, really, It's been a long time since I played for anyone but myself. Well, don't you worry about a thing. Our customers aren't music critics. They'll just be happy to have something nice to listen to while they eat. As the dinner shift approached, Lily took her break early to change clothes. She had brought a simple black dress, nothing fancy but a step up from her waitress uniform. In the cramped employee bathroom, she washed her face and applied a touch of makeup, then brushed her hair loose from its usual ponytail. Looking in the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. For a moment, she saw the girl she used to be, the one with dreams of concert halls and standing ovations. It's just one night at a diner, she told her reflection. Don't make it bigger than it is. But her heart wasn't listening. By 6 o'clock, the diner was busier than usual for a Friday. Word had spread, and it seemed like every regular had decided to come see what all the fuss was about. Lily helped with the dinner rush, serving food and refilling drinks as always, painfully aware of the curious glances following her. Is that her? She overheard one customer ask another. The waitress who's going to play? That's what Joe said. Been working here 2 years and nobody knew she could play a note. At 7, Joe nodded to her. Whenever you're ready, Lily. No rush. Taking a deep breath, Lily made her way to the keyboard. Someone, probably Rosie, had placed a small vase of wildflowers beside it. The gesture touched her deeply. As she sat down, the chatter in the diner quieted slightly. Not completely. This wasn't a concert hall, but enough that she knew people were watching, waiting. Lily closed her eyes for a moment, centering herself as her old teacher had taught her. She began with something simple, a Bach minuet she had learned as a child. It was well within her capabilities, something to warm up her fingers and calm her nerves. The keyboard sound wasn't great, but she had done her best to adjust it over the past few days. As she played, the tension in her shoulders gradually eased. This wasn't so bad. The diner's ambient noise continued, the clink of silverware, the murmur of conversation, the occasional burst of laughter, but she could sense people listening, even as they ate and talked. Encouraged, she moved on to a Chopin waltz, one of the less technically demanding ones, but beautiful in its simplicity. Her fingers remembered more than she had expected, muscle memory taking over where conscious thought faltered. After 20 minutes, she paused, flexing her hands. There was a smattering of applause, which made her blush. She hadn't expected that. Joe appeared at her side with a glass of water. "You're doing great," he said. "Everyone loves it." "Really?" Lily glanced around the diner, noticing for the first time how many tables were filled, how many unfamiliar faces were present. "We've got people who've never set foot in here before," Joe said. "Rosie's over the moon." As if on cue, Rosie bustled over, beaming. "Lily, you're a revelation. Why didn't you tell us you could play like that? We would have had you performing ages ago." Before Lily could respond, Rosie was called away to handle a customer's question. Joe patted Lily's shoulder. "Take your time. Play whatever you like." Returning to the keyboard, Lily felt a newfound confidence. She moved into more challenging pieces, a Mozart sonata, a Debussy arabesque. Her technique was rusty, and she simplified some of the more difficult passages, but the music's essence remained. As she played, she found herself watching the diners. An elderly couple held hands across their table, eyes closed, swaying slightly to a Schubert impromptu. A young father bounced a toddler on his knee in time to a lively Joplin rag. A group of teenagers who had come in loudly but were now sitting quietly filmed her with their phones. For the first time in years, Lily felt like she was connecting with strangers through her music, building invisible bridges between her inner world and theirs. It was a heady feeling, one she had almost forgotten. During a brief pause, Denise appeared with her husband in tow. "I told you she was amazing," she said to him, loud enough for Lily to hear. "And to think she's been hiding this all this time." Her husband, a tall man with kind eyes, nodded appreciatively. "You've got a real gift," he told Lily. "Do you take requests?" Before she could answer, others chimed in with their own requests. "Do you know any Billy Joel? Can you play that song from Titanic?"
My wife loves Adele. Anything by her?
Lily hadn't prepared any popular music, but she had always had a good ear. "I can try," she said, and launched into a simplified version of a well-known movie theme. It wasn't perfect, but the customers seemed delighted all the same. As the evening wore on, the atmosphere in the diner transformed. People lingered over coffee and dessert, reluctant to leave. Strangers struck up conversations about music. One man mentioned he played guitar, and soon he and Lily were discussing the similarities and differences in their instruments. Around 9, the door opened and Lily's mother walked in, leaning heavily on her walker. Lily's hands froze mid-phrase. She hadn't expected this. Her mother rarely left the house these days, the effort too taxing on her limited energy. "Mom," Lily stood up from the keyboard. "What are you doing here?" Her mother smiled, her face tired but her eyes bright. "You didn't think I'd miss your performance, did you? Our neighbor drove me." She nodded toward Mrs. Patel, who was helping her to a recently vacated table. "You should have told me," Lily said, hurrying over to help her mother sit down. "I would have arranged something." "And you would have worried all night," her mother replied. "Besides, I wanted to surprise you. Now don't stop on my account. I want to hear what everyone's been talking about." Returning to the keyboard, Lily felt a different kind of nervousness. Her mother had been her first audience, her most steadfast supporter. Even when financial realities had forced Lily to leave school, her mother had never stopped believing in her talent. For her mother, Lily played a Brahms intermezzo, a piece she had performed at her last recital at the conservatory. It was challenging, especially on the limited keyboard, but she poured her heart into it. All her love for music, all her grief at having set it aside, all her gratitude for this unexpected chance to reclaim a piece of herself. When she finished, there was a moment of complete silence in the diner, broken only by the soft sound of her mother crying. "That was beautiful, sweetheart," her mother said, wiping her eyes. "Just beautiful." The spell was broken by enthusiastic applause from the other diners. Joe appeared at Lily's side again, his expression thoughtful. "Lily," he said, I think we need to talk about making this a regular thing. What do you mean? She asked, still watching her mother, who was now chatting animatedly with Mrs. Patel and Rosie. I mean, people love this. Look around. He gestured at the full tables, the engaged faces. We could do this every Friday. Maybe Saturdays too, eventually. We'd pay you properly, of course. Lily's heart raced. A regular gig. A chance to play music again. To be recognized for her talent, to make extra money doing something she loved. It wasn't the future she had once envisioned for herself, but it was more than she had dared to hope for these past 2 years. Can I think about it? She asked. Joe nodded. Of course, no rush. But just so you know, we've already had 3 people ask if you'll be playing again next week. As Joe walked away, Lily turned back to the keyboard. For her final piece of the evening, she played something of her own composition, a simple melody she had been working on in private moments. It wasn't polished, but it was honest, a musical reflection of where she found herself now, balanced between who she had been and who she might yet become. What she didn't notice was the man sitting alone in the corner, listening intently, making notes on his phone. He had come in late, ordered only coffee, and hadn't taken his eyes off her since she began to play. Now, as she finished her impromptu composition, he nodded to himself as if coming to a decision, and slipped his phone into his pocket. A month had passed since Lily's first performance at the diner, and everything had changed. Friday nights were now standing room only, with people calling ahead to reserve tables. Joe had extended her playing to Saturday nights too, and the extra income was making a real difference for Lily and her mother. Your medication costs nearly covered by playing piano, her mother marveled one evening as Lily counted out her earnings. Who would have thought? Lily smiled, still somewhat amazed herself at the turn her life had taken. And I'm actually enjoying it, she admitted. It's nice to have music back in my life. The keyboard had been upgraded too. After the second packed weekend, Joe and Rosie had invested in a better model with weighted keys that felt more like a real piano. They'd also rearranged some tables to create a proper space for Lily to perform, complete with a small spotlight. It's practically a concert venue now, Denise had joked, but there was truth in her words. What had started as background music had become an attraction in its own right. Lily had expanded her repertoire, mixing classical pieces with popular songs requested by regular customers. She'd even begun to play more of her own compositions, encouraged by the positive response. Her confidence grew with each performance, and sometimes, in quiet moments, she allowed herself to wonder if there might be a path back to the life she'd once dreamed of. Then came the phone call that changed everything. Lily, it's Joe, came the familiar voice when she answered. I need a favor. A big one. It was Wednesday afternoon, her day off, and Lily had been helping her mother with physical therapy exercises. What's up? We've got a private booking for tomorrow night, Joe explained. Some big-shot music producer from the city is hosting a dinner for industry people. 20 guests. Very exclusive. Okay, Lily said slowly, not understanding what this had to do with her. She wasn't scheduled to work Thursday. They're bringing their own pianist, Joe continued. Some hotshot who plays for all their events. But I just got a call that he's come down with food poisoning or something. They're in a bind. Lily's stomach tightened as she began to see where this was heading. Joe, I know. It's your day off. But they're paying a premium for the booking. And when they called about the pianist issue, I might have mentioned we have our own talented musician. You didn't, Lily groaned. I did, Joe admitted. Look, they were about to cancel the whole thing. Do you know what that would do to our reputation? Not to mention our bank account? Lily sighed, torn between loyalty to Joe and her own insecurity. Playing for the regular diner crowd was one thing. Playing for a group of music industry professionals was something else entirely. These are serious music people. Joe, they'll know every mistake I make. They'll also know real talent when they hear it, Joe countered. Come on, Lily, just this once. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. After a long pause, Lily agreed, ignoring the flutter of panic in her chest. It was just one night, she told herself. What was the worst that could happen? The next day, Lily arrived at the diner 2 hours early, her nerves frayed despite a mostly sleepless night practicing. The diner had been transformed. The everyday tables had been pushed together to create one long dining table, decorated with flowers and candles. The regular fluorescent lights were dimmed, replaced by string lights that gave the humble space an unexpectedly elegant atmosphere. Wow, Lily breathed, taking it all in. Rosie went all out. Told you it was a big deal, Joe said, appearing from the kitchen with a stack of fancy plates Lily had never seen before. These folks could have booked any restaurant in the city, but their usual place had a pipe burst. Their event planner knew my cousin who mentioned our piano nights, and here we are. Lily set her bag down and went straight to the keyboard to warm up. She had brought her best outfit, a simple black dress that had once been her recital attire, and would change later. For now, she needed to get comfortable with the space and decide what to play. I put together a playlist, she told Joe. Mostly classical, some film scores, nothing too experimental. Sounds perfect, Joe assured her, though Lily suspected he had little idea what she was talking about. Just be yourself. That's what people love. As Lily practiced, the staff bustled around her, transforming the diner further. By the time she took a break to change clothes, the place was barely recognizable. If not for the vintage sign still visible through the windows, she might have thought she was in an upscale Manhattan restaurant. You look nice, Rosie commented when Lily emerged from the bathroom in her dress, hair loosely curled around her shoulders. Very professional. Thanks, Lily said, tugging self-consciously at the dress. It had been fitted during her conservatory days and was a bit loose now. I just hope I don't embarrass anyone. Nonsense, Rosie scoffed. You'll show those city folks what real talent looks like. Before Lily could respond, the front door opened and a woman in a sleek pantsuit entered, tablet in hand. I'm Vivian, the event coordinator, she announced briskly. We'll be arriving in about 30 minutes. Is everything ready? What followed was a whirlwind of last-minute adjustments. The temperature was too cold, then too hot. The lighting needed to be adjusted. The table wasn't quite centered. Through it all, Vivian barely acknowledged Lily's presence, which only heightened her anxiety. Finally, as staff members scurried to fulfill Vivian's demands, the coordinator turned her attention to Lily. You're the replacement pianist? Lily nodded, fighting the urge to correct her. She wasn't a replacement anything. This was her diner, her keyboard, but the words stuck in her throat. Vivian looked her up and down, expression unreadable. Thomas sends his playlist to me in advance. What will you be playing? I've prepared a selection of classical pieces, Lily began, but Vivian cut her off. Mr. Reynolds prefers jazz during appetizers, classical during the main course, and contemporary instrumental for dessert. Can you manage that? Lily swallowed hard. Jazz wasn't her strongest genre, but she knew enough standards to get by. Yes, I can do that. Vivian nodded curtly. Good. Start playing when they arrive, but keep it subtle. This is a business dinner with entertainment, not a concert. With that, she turned away, leaving Lily feeling like a servant rather than a musician. For a moment, she considered walking out, telling Joe to find someone else. But she couldn't do that to him, not after all he and Rosie had done for her, so instead, she sat at the keyboard and began to review jazz standards in her head, fighting back the nagging fear that she was about to make a fool of herself. The guests arrived precisely at 7, filing into the diner with the confident air of people accustomed to fine dining and VIP treatment. Lily recognized none of them, but their expensive clothes and casual display of wealth told her everything she needed to know. These were people who moved in circles far removed from her daily life of diner shifts and medical bills. As instructed, Lily began to play as they were seated, a gentle rendition of Autumn Leaves that blended into the background of introductions and drink orders. No one looked her way or acknowledged the music, which was both a relief and slightly deflating. A tall man with silver hair took the seat at the head of the table. Mr. Reynolds, Lily presumed, the music producer hosting the dinner. He spoke with easy authority, and everyone seemed eager to catch his attention, to be drawn into his conversational orbit. For the first hour, Lily played on autopilot, moving from one jazz standard to another, watching the dinner unfold like a scene from a movie about a world she didn't belong in. The guests laughed and talked business, occasionally raising their voices to be heard over one another, but never falling silent to listen to the music. As the main course was served, Lily transitioned to classical as instructed, beginning with a Mozart sonata she could play in her sleep. Her mind wandered as her fingers moved across the keys. What would her life have been like if she'd finished at the conservatory? Would she be playing at events like this, but as an invited guest rather than the hired help? The thought made her playing falter momentarily, a wrong note disrupting the familiar melody. Lily winced, quickly recovering, but not before catching the eye of a younger man seated near Mr. Reynolds. He tilted his head slightly, his attention caught by the mistake, and continued to watch her as she played. Uncomfortable under his scrutiny, Lily focused intently on the keys, determined not to make another error. But his attention had rattled her, and she found herself playing more stiffly, with less of the natural expression that had won over the diner's regular customers. By the time dessert was served, Lily's nerves were frayed. She moved into contemporary pieces as instructed, but her heart wasn't in it. She felt like an imposter, a diner waitress pretending to be a serious musician, and surely everyone could tell. Then disaster struck. As Lily began a popular film theme, the opening notes came out all wrong. She had transposed the piece to a different key in practice, but was now playing in the original key from muscle memory while trying to read her notes. The resulting clash was impossible to ignore. She stopped abruptly, feeling heat rush to her face. The conversation at the table faltered, and several heads turned her way. Lily wanted to disappear, to sink through the floor or run out the back door. Instead, she took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a moment, and began again, this time ignoring her notes and playing from memory. But the damage was done. She could feel their attention on her now, not in appreciation but in judgment. When she dared to look up again, she found Mr. Reynolds watching her intently, his expression unreadable. Beside him, the younger man who had noticed her earlier mistake leaned over to whisper something in the producer's ear. Lily looked away quickly, focusing on finishing the piece without further errors. As soon as it ended, she launched into the next song, hoping to move past the awkward moment. But before she could play more than a few measures, a voice cut through the room. "Excuse me." It was Mr. Reynolds, standing now, his voice commanding immediate attention. The room fell silent, all eyes on him. Lily's hands froze on the keys, her heart pounding. "I believe we've been rather rude to our pianist this evening," he continued. "We've been talking business and ignoring the remarkable talent right in front of us." Lily felt herself shrinking in her seat, certain that what followed would be polite but condescending praise, the kind reserved for amateurs who try their best. "Would you mind," Mr. Reynolds asked, addressing her directly for the first time, "playing something of your own choosing? Something that showcases what you can really do, rather than what my event planner thinks should be background music?" The request, so unexpected, left Lily momentarily speechless. She looked to Joe, who stood near the kitchen door, for guidance. He gave an encouraging nod. Yes, I can do that," she finally managed. As the guests watched with curious expressions, Lily took a moment to consider what to play. If this was to be her one chance to show what she was capable of, what piece would best represent her as a musician? The answer came to her suddenly. Not a classical masterpiece or a popular hit, but her own composition, the one she'd been working on in private moments, the one that told her story without words. With trembling hands but a clear sense of purpose, Lily began to play. The room fell silent as Lily's fingers touched the keys. Gone was the background music that had filled the space earlier. This was different. The first notes hung in the air, delicate yet confident, like a question being asked. Lily closed her eyes, shutting out the watchful gazes of the industry professionals. She thought of her mother's encouraging smile, of the diner regulars who had embraced her music, of the long journey that had brought her to this moment. The composition flowed from somewhere deep inside her, telling her story in a language more honest than words. The piece began simply, a melody that spoke of ordinary days and quiet dreams. Then it grew, building in complexity and emotion, weaving in elements of classical training with unexpected turns that were entirely her own. There were echoes of her life in every phrase, moments of joy, of struggle, of loss and resilience. As she played, Lily forgot where she was. The diner, the guests, the pressure of performance all faded away. There was only the music, the conversation between her heart and her hands. In this moment, she wasn't a waitress filling in for a professional. She was exactly who she was meant to be. The final notes of her composition lingered in the air, soft and questioning, like the beginning but transformed by the journey. Then silence. For a terrible moment, Lily thought she had failed. She opened her eyes slowly, bracing herself for polite smiles masking disappointment or worse, complete indifference. What she saw instead stunned her. Every person at the table was completely still. Mr. Reynolds stood frozen, wine glass halfway to his lips. The young man who had noticed her earlier mistake leaned forward in his chair, eyes wide. Even Vivian, the demanding event coordinator, was staring open-mouthed. Then Mr. Reynolds set down his glass and began to applaud. One by one, the others joined in until the small diner echoed with the sound. It wasn't polite applause, the kind offered out of obligation, but genuine, enthusiastic appreciation. That, Mr. Reynolds said when the clapping finally subsided, was extraordinary. Truly extraordinary. He turned to his guests. Did I not promise you something special tonight? The others murmured agreement, several of them now looking at Lily with new interest as if seeing her for the first time. What's your name? Mr. Reynolds asked, approaching the keyboard. Lily, she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. Lily, he repeated. And that piece, wait, it's your own composition? She nodded, still dazed by their reaction. Does it have a name? Lily hesitated. She had never thought to name the piece. It had been a private thing, something she played for herself in stolen moments. I call it Detour, she said finally. Because sometimes the path you didn't choose leads you somewhere unexpected. Mr. Reynolds nodded thoughtfully. Aptly named. He gestured to the young man who had been watching her. My colleague here was right about you. The young man stood and joined Mr. Reynolds. Up close, Lily could see he was probably around her age, though his tailored suit and confident demeanor made him seem older. I heard you play last Friday, he explained, seeing her confused expression. I was in town early, looking for dinner spots for tonight's meeting and stumbled on this place. When I heard you play, I knew we had to bring the whole team here. You were the man in the corner, Lily realized, remembering the solitary figure who had listened so intently. You never requested anything. I didn't want to interrupt. What I was hearing was too good. Mr. Reynolds cleared his throat. Thomas, our usual pianist, is technically flawless. He plays exactly what's on the page, exactly as expected. He waved his hand dismissively. Perfectly pleasant background music. What you just played wasn't background anything. It demanded attention. Lily felt overwhelmed. These were industry professionals, people who listened to world-class musicians every day. Their praise seemed impossible, unreal. Where did you study? The young man asked. I was at Bedford Conservatory for 2 years, Lily replied, hesitant to admit she hadn't completed her education. Mr. Reynolds raised his eyebrows. Bedford? That's a serious program. Why only 2 years? The question hung in the air and Lily felt the familiar tug of shame. How could she explain without sounding like she was making excuses or worse, asking for pity? Life happened, she said simply. My mother got sick. Medical bills piled up. I had to make a choice. She expected them to lose interest, to return to their dinner with polite nods and quickly fading enthusiasm. Instead, Mr. Reynolds looked at her with increased respect. And now you're playing in a diner, he said, not as a judgment but as an observation. Yes, Joe and Rosie gave me a chance when I needed one. From his position near the kitchen, Joe beamed with pride. Well, Lily, Mr. Reynolds said, reaching into his jacket pocket and extracting a business card, I'd like to give you another chance. If you're interested. Lily stared at the card, unable to process what was happening. The card was simple but elegant, bearing the logo of Reynolds Music Group, one of the largest labels in the industry. We have a small theater in our building, Mr. Reynolds continued. We host showcase events for new talent. Nothing too intimidating. Small audiences, supportive environment. I'd like you to come play for us. The full piece you just performed, plus anything else you've composed. I don't have many finished pieces, Lily admitted, panic rising at the thought of performing in a real venue, in front of people who expected excellence. That's fine. Play what you have. Mix in some classical if you'd like. He smiled, a genuine warmth breaking through his professional demeanor. I've been doing this for 40 years, Lily. I know something special when I hear it. The young man, whose name Lily still didn't know, nodded in agreement. The raw material is there. With the right guidance, the right opportunities. Peter here is our talent development director, Mr. Reynolds explained. If you decide to come play for us, he'll be your main point of contact. Lily clutched the business card like a lifeline. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it, Peter suggested. Take some time. Talk to your family. But don't take too long. We've got a showcase coming up in 3 weeks. With that, he and Mr. Reynolds returned to their seats, allowing the dinner to continue. The other guests immediately peppered them with questions, their voices rising with curiosity and excitement. Lily sat frozen at the keyboard, the business card still in her hand. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her, waitresses in small-town diners with unfinished dreams and unpaid bills. Yet the card in her hand was real. The conversations happening at the table, conversations about her, were real. The music she had played, the music that had poured from her soul and somehow touched these sophisticated strangers, was real. "You okay?" Joe asked, appearing at her side with a glass of water. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "They want me to play in the city," Lily said, her voice hollow with disbelief. "At their company. Some kind of showcase?" Joe's face split into a wide grin. "I knew it. Didn't I tell you they'd recognize real talent when they heard it?" "But Joe, I can't just... I have responsibilities here. My shifts, my mother..." "Stop," Joe said firmly. "Just stop right there. Don't you dare talk yourself out of this before it's even begun. We'll figure out the shifts. Rosie and I have managed without you before. We can do it again. And my mother would be heartbroken if you turned this down because of her." You know that deep down. Lily did know. Her mother had always been her biggest supporter, had always believed in her talent even when Lily herself had given up. She would be overjoyed at this opportunity, would practically push Lily out the door herself. "It's just one performance," Joe continued. "See where it leads. What have you got to lose?" What indeed? The question echoed in Lily's mind as she watched the dinner party continue, now with a new energy in the air. These people had heard something in her music that they valued, something worth pursuing. For the remainder of the evening, Lily played as requested, returning to the role of background musician. But everything had changed. She felt different at the keyboard now. Not a waitress play-acting as a pianist, but a musician who happened to work as a waitress. The distinction was subtle but profound. As the guests prepared to leave, several approached to compliment her playing. One woman, a recording engineer based on the snippets of conversation Lily overheard, asked if she had considered making a demo. "I haven't gotten that far yet," Lily admitted. The woman smiled knowingly. "You will." Peter, the talent development director, was the last to approach. "I meant what I said earlier. The raw material is there. You have something authentic, something that can't be taught." He handed her another card, this one with his direct contact information. "Call me tomorrow. We can talk details." After they had all gone and the diner was quiet again, Lily sat alone at the keyboard. The events of the evening felt dreamlike, too good to be true. "So," Joe said, sitting beside her with 2 cups of coffee, "are you going to call him tomorrow?" Lily looked down at the 2 business cards in her hand, physical proof that the evening had been real. "I think I am," she said slowly. "I think I need to see where this goes." Joe clinked his coffee mug against hers in a toast. "To unexpected opportunities. To detours," Lily added with a smile. That night, as she sat by her mother's bed and recounted the evening's events, Lily felt something she hadn't experienced in years: possibility. The future, which had seemed so fixed and limited, suddenly stretched before her, full of potential paths. "I always knew this day would come," her mother said, eyes shining with unshed tears. "Your music was always meant to be heard by more than just me." "It might not lead to anything," Lily cautioned, not wanting either of them to get their hopes too high. Her mother reached for her hand, squeezing it with surprising strength. "It already has, sweetheart. It's already led you back to yourself." And that, Lily realized, was the true miracle of the evening. More valuable than the business cards or the praise from industry professionals was the rediscovery of her own voice, her own passion. Whatever happened next, whether she played 1 showcase or 100, she had reclaimed a part of herself that she had thought was lost forever. As she drifted off to sleep that night, melodies swirled through her mind. Not just echoes of what she had already created, but new themes, new possibilities. For the first time in years, Lily allowed herself to dream again. 3 weeks passed in a blur of preparation and nervous anticipation. Lily spent every spare moment at the keyboard, refining her original composition and working on 2 new pieces that had flowed from her renewed connection to music. The diner's regular customers became her first audience, offering encouragement and honest feedback as she experimented with different approaches. "That middle section still doesn't feel right," she told Denise one afternoon after playing. through a particularly challenging passage. It's missing something. Sounded fine to me, Denise replied with a shrug. But what do I know? I can barely play chopsticks. Lily smiled, grateful for her friend's support even if she couldn't provide technical advice. It's not about wrong notes. It's about whether it says what I want it to say. And that was the challenge. After years of playing other people's music, finding her own voice and her own musical language was both exhilarating and terrifying. Each piece she created felt like revealing a part of herself that had long been hidden. Peter, the talent development director, called every few days to check on her progress and answer questions about the upcoming showcase. It's very casual, he assured her repeatedly. Just industry folks looking for new talent. No pressure. But no pressure seemed impossible when Lily thought about performing in an actual theater, on an actual stage, for people who made their living discovering and promoting musicians. She had moments of paralyzing doubt when she was certain she was making a fool of herself, reaching for something far beyond her grasp. What if I freeze up? She asked her mother one evening. What if I can't remember the pieces? What if they realize I don't belong there? Her mother, who had been having a good week health-wise, took Lily's hands in hers. Listen to me. Music has always been your gift. Not something you learned or acquired, but something that was part of you from the beginning. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be yourself. The night before the showcase, Joe closed the diner early and hosted a rehearsal dinner for Lily. All the regulars came, along with several of her mother's friends and neighbors. The small space was packed with people who had witnessed her journey from silent waitress to recognized talent. A toast, Joe announced, raising a glass of sparkling cider. To Lily, who reminded us all that it's never too late to follow your dreams. To Lily, the crowd echoed, raising their glasses. Overwhelmed by their support, Lily could barely speak. Instead, she sat at the keyboard and played for them. Not the pieces she had prepared for the showcase, but simple, joyful improvisations that expressed her gratitude better than words ever could. Later that night, as she packed her best clothes for the trip to the city, Lily realized how much had changed in such a short time. Just months ago, her life had seemed set on an unchangeable course. Working at the diner, caring for her mother, putting her own dreams aside. Now the future felt wide open, full of possibilities she had long since stopped imagining. The day of the showcase arrived cold and clear. Mrs. Patel, their neighbor, had agreed to stay with Lily's mother, who wasn't feeling well enough to make the trip to the city. Though she tried to hide it, Lily could see the disappointment in her mother's eyes. I'll record it for you, she promised, hugging her gently. Every note. You play for all those fancy people like you played for me last night, her mother said firmly. From the heart, that's all that matters. Joe drove Lily to the city in his old pickup truck, the keyboard carefully secured in the back. They hardly spoke during the journey, both lost in their own thoughts about how much had changed since that first Friday night performance. The Reynolds Music Group occupied a sleek building in the Arts District. Lily had expected something imposing and intimidating, but the Showcase Theater turned out to be an intimate space with just over 100 seats. As Peter had promised, it felt welcoming rather than overwhelming. There you are, Peter greeted them in the lobby, his usual formal demeanor softened by a genuine smile. Perfect timing. We've got about an hour before people start arriving. Let me show you around. The backstage area was simple but professional, with a baby grand piano positioned center stage. Lily ran her fingers over the keys, marveling at the rich, responsive sound, so different from the diner's electronic keyboard. You can warm up here, Peter explained. Then there's a small green room where you can wait until it's your turn. We have 4 performers tonight, each playing for about 20 minutes. You're third in the lineup. As Peter walked them through the evening's schedule, Lily tried to absorb all the information while fighting the rising tide of anxiety. This was all happening so fast. Just a month ago, she had been serving coffee and pie, content in her routine if not completely fulfilled. Now she stood on the threshold of a world she had once dreamed of, but had long since abandoned. You okay? Joe asked as Peter was called away to handle some technical issue. You look a little pale. Lily took a deep breath. Just nervous. This is a lot. Hey, Joe said, placing his hands on her shoulders. You've already won, you know that? Whatever happens tonight, You've already proven you've got what it takes to be here. Everything else is just details." His words steadied her, reminding her of how far she had already come. She wasn't just a waitress pretending to be a musician anymore. She was a musician who happened to work as a waitress. The distinction made all the difference. As the hour approached, Lily changed into her performance outfit, not the simple black dress she had worn at the diner, but a midnight blue dress Rosie had insisted on buying her for the occasion. "Something worthy of the moment," Rosie had said, brushing aside Lily's protest about the cost. The audience began to filter in, a mix of industry professionals, music critics, and supporters of the other performers. Peter had explained that these showcases happened monthly and had become something of an insider event in the music world, a place to discover new talent before anyone else. From her position in the green room, Lily could hear the murmur of voices, the occasional laugh or greeting as people took their seats. Her heart raced and her palms were sweaty. She wiped them on a tissue, then flexed her fingers, going through the mental exercises her old piano teacher had taught her for managing performance anxiety. The first performer was a young violinist whose haunting melodies carried even to the green room. The audience responded with enthusiastic applause. The second was a jazz quartet, their syncopated rhythms vibrant and energetic. More applause, even louder this time. Then it was Lily's turn. "Ready?" Peter asked, appearing at the green room door. No, she wasn't ready. She might never be ready. But she nodded anyway and followed him to the wings of the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC announced, "our next performer comes to us with a unique background. Until recently, you were more likely to find her serving pie than playing piano." There was a gentle ripple of laughter from the audience. But talent has a way of making itself known, even in the most unexpected places. "Please welcome to the stage, Lily Chen." Taking a deep breath, Lily walked onto the stage. The lights were brighter than she had expected, making it difficult to see the audience clearly. In a way, that was a blessing. She took her seat at the piano, adjusted her position, and looked out at the blur of faces. Somewhere in that darkness was Joe, the man who had given her a chance when she needed one most. Somewhere was Mr. Reynolds, who had recognized something in her music worth nurturing. And somewhere, in spirit if not in person, was her mother, whose sacrifice and support had made this moment possible. Lily placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. Her first piece, Detour, the one that had caught Mr. Reynolds' attention at the diner, flowed from her hands with new confidence. She had refined it over the past weeks, smoothing rough edges and deepening emotional transitions, but its heart remained the same. A musical journey through unexpected turns that somehow led exactly where she needed to go. The theater was silent as she played, the audience leaning into the music drawn into her story. When the final notes faded away, there was a moment of complete stillness before the applause began. Not polite or perfunctory, but genuine and appreciative. Emboldened by their response, Lily moved into her second piece, a more complex composition inspired by her mother's resilience through years of illness. The music spoke of struggle and pain, but also of enduring love and quiet strength. As she played, Lily felt tears threatening, but she channeled that emotion into her fingers, letting the piano speak for her. For her final piece, Lily had created something new, a celebration of beginnings, of doors opening, of light breaking through after long darkness. It was the most technically demanding of her compositions, incorporating elements of classical structure with more contemporary harmonies. There were moments when her fingers barely kept up with the cascading notes, but the energy of the piece carried her forward. When she finished, the audience erupted. Lily stood, somewhat shakily, and bowed as she had been taught years ago at the conservatory. The faces before her were no longer a blur, but individuals, smiling, nodding, some even standing. In that moment, everything else fell away. The years of doubt, the abandoned dreams, the practical compromises. She was exactly where she belonged. Backstage, Joe waited with tears in his eyes. "That was something else, kid. Something else entirely." Before Lily could respond, they were surrounded by people, the other performers offering congratulations, audience members expressing admiration, industry professionals handing her business cards. It was overwhelming and surreal. Mr. Reynolds made his way through the crowd, his face wreathed in a satisfied smile. "What did I tell you?" he said to Peter, who stood nearby. "Exactly what I said we'd find." Then to Lily, We'd like to offer you a development deal. Nothing too restrictive, just a chance to record some of your work professionally. See where it leads. Peter will go over the details when you're ready. The following days passed in a whirlwind of meetings and decisions. The development deal was modest but fair, offering Lily the chance to record an EP of her original compositions with professional engineers and producers. There would be no guarantee of promotion or distribution. That would depend on the final product, but it was an opportunity few independent musicians ever received. You'll need to spend time in the city for recording sessions, Peter explained during a meeting at the diner. We can work around your schedule to some extent, but there will be commitments. Lily nodded, already considering the logistics. Her mother's care, her shifts at the diner, the practical realities that couldn't simply be wished away. I want to do this, she said firmly. We'll make it work, and somehow they did. The diner hired a part-time waitress to cover some of Lily's shifts. Mrs. Patel agreed to expand her caregiving hours. A cousin who lived in the city offered Lily a place to stay during recording sessions. 6 months after the showcase, Lily's EP was released. 4 original compositions recorded with the care and quality that had once seemed far beyond her reach. It didn't top any charts or make her an overnight sensation, but it opened doors she had long thought closed to her. Local radio stations played her music. A few small venues in neighboring towns invited her to perform. A community college asked if she would consider teaching a piano class one evening a week. Each opportunity was a stepping stone, a chance to build the life she had once dreamed of, one note at a time. And through it all, Lily kept her Friday night spot at the diner. No matter how busy her schedule became, she made time to play for the regulars who had supported her from the beginning. You don't need to keep doing this, Joe told her one night after a particularly well-attended performance. You've got bigger stages calling now. Lily smiled as she gathered her sheet music. This is where it all started. This is where I found my voice again. I'm not going anywhere, and she meant it. Success hadn't changed her fundamental understanding of what mattered. The people who believed in you, the places that shaped you, the experiences that taught you who you really were. 1 year to the day after her first performance at the diner, Lily released her first full album. The cover photo showed her at the diner's keyboard, still wearing her waitress apron, a quiet smile on her face. The title, printed in simple, elegant font, read, The Waitress's Sonata. It was, she knew, just the beginning of her story.